for the kind invitation. I wish I could be there with you physically. I will try to do 3 things today. First, briefly recap EPHA's work on food labeling. What is it that we asked for, why, and what we learned? Second, building from that experience, share thoughts on how the food information to consumer regulation can carry environmental information on pack. And third, close with practical, no-nonsense steps that can be taken to move this forward. At EPHA, just to start with, we've treated labeling not as a communications gimmick, but as part of the food environment. One lever among several that helps people make healthier choices and helps the market reward better products. Our core asks have been consistent. 1, mandatory harmonized interpretive front-of-pack nutrition label across the EU, a single, easy-to-read system, not a patchwork of schemes. And the second, EU nutrient profiles, to underpin the label and to stop unhealthy products carrying misleading claims. We have further asked the Commission to finish the revision of the FIC regulation with a clear public health aim, including better date marking, justified origin information, and meaningful information on alcoholic beverages. And this is still work in progress. And we have also asked them to pair labeling with other measures that shape the food environment, like marketing restrictions to children, like healthier public procurement, and smart pricing signals. How have we advanced this? First of all, the most standard way is that we responded to the Commission's calls for evidence on front-of-pack labeling and on nutrient profiles, setting out why a single interpretive label is needed and how nutrient profiles are the keystone for both labeling and claims. We submitted to the consultation on the revision of the Food Information to Consumer Regulation, arguing for a health-centered update and warning against regulatory drift. We situated labeling also inside the wider Sustainable Food Systems agenda, because food information is part of how we shift diets towards health and sustainability, and it should not be a standalone exercise. And we built and joined coalitions with public health, consumer, patient organizations to keep momentum when the file slowed, including open letters to ministers, joint statements that pressed for a timely proposal. And there are 4, I would say, key takeaways that we collected along the way. First is that interpretive beats informational. So color-coded, at-a-glance formats consistently outperform dense back-of-pack data on consumer understanding and speed of use. Second, harmonization protects both people and the single market. One EU approach avoids confusion, it avoids a race to the bottom, and it rewards companies that improve products at scale. The third is that profiles matter. Without nutrient profiles, unhealthy foods can still wear healthy-sounding claims, undermining trust and diluting the reformulation incentive. And the fourth is that labels help, but labels alone won't fix diets. We need to pair them with measures that change what's on the market, that change what's marketed, what's available, what's affordable, especially for children and lower income households. And these lessons are transferable. They inform how we can add environmental information to labels in a way that people understand, that businesses can implement, and that authorities can enforce. Let's start with, in thinking how to directly transfer that to the existing FIC regulation to environmental information, let's start with the permission question. So can environmental information sit under this law? And the simple answer is yes, because the purpose of the law is to protect people's health and their interests as consumers, and those interests include environmental, social, and ethical considerations. The law already allows information to be shown through symbols and pictograms, and it allows the details to be set through delegated and implementing acts once there is a solid case that people understand the information and that it serves the public interest. So in plain language, the door is open, and we don't need a brand new law to put an interpretive environmental indicator on pack. We can use the same legal architecture that was designed to host the front of pack nutrition labeling. Second is the precedent question, why this is credible. EU institutions have explored sustainable and eco-labeling for food for several years, and the conversation is therefore ripe and mature. External reviewers have warned about fragmentation across member states, which only strengthens the case for a single EU approach rather than a proliferation of private or national eco-icons. And also our own coalitions and consultations on nutrition labeling showed that voluntary, uncoordinated schemes create confusion for people and cost for companies without really delivering public health value. The third question in the translation is the design question, how to do it well. Well, this is where the front of pack nutrition playbook helps. If we add environmental information, it should follow the same guardrails. It should consider scientific robustness and transparency, so the method must be clear, published, reviewable, and also consistent across member states. It needs to secure simple and it needs to be simple and interpretive at a glance, like a single score or class, not a table of raw emission numbers that people cannot process in 3 seconds. Also, it needs to consider anti-greenwashing safeguards, which means a third-party verification where claims risk being gammed, and also standardized wording and icons and meaningful penalties for misleading labels. And also coherence with nutrition and public health is critical, because the worst outcome would be a product that is green on environment but poor on nutrition. And we must connect the environmental indicators with nutrient profiles and the front of pack nutrition scheme so that they speak the same language to the shopper. In terms of the format, an interpretive color-coded class is best because it's already familiar to people from front of pack nutrition labeling, and that keeps the cognitive loads low and supports quick comparison within the category. The indicator should be category relative to avoid unfairly rewarding products just because they sit in an inherently low impact category and penalizing all other regardless of better practice within their category. Behind the icon, a common EU method should aggregate a small set of transparent metrics, like the greenhouse gas intensity per unit of product, evidence-based antibiotic stewardship, stocking indicators, confinement indicators, such that they meaningfully capture the environmental pressure. When it comes to the current gaps on environmental intensity of livestock production, what's missing today is that food labels do not tell people whether animal-sourced food or products come from farms that are environmentally intensive. There is no signal on relative greenhouse gas intensity, on stocking density, on confinement, on responsible antibiotic stewardship. Some of this information exists elsewhere in agricultural regulation, but it very rarely reaches the consumer in a clear and comparable way. And there is no single EU method for turning farm-level environmental metrics into a consumer-friendly on-pack indicator. And these gaps are important, and they're important for health as well, because the environmental exposures are public health exposures, and air, water quality, antimicrobial resistance pressures, climate-related risks, they all flow in and from the food systems. And the other reason for the importance for health is that bringing credible environmental information onto the pack is fully aligned with the health mission of food information law. And then it helps people align their purchasing with their values and creates a clear signal. In terms of practical steps to move from the idea to implementation, we should align on a crisp shared ask, which I guess should be one EU-wide interpretive environmental indicator under the FIC regulation. And also the second should be the coherence with front of pack nutrition labeling and nutrient profiles so that people get a simple, trusted two-signal system at the shelf. This all needs to be packaged in plain language. We need to map the existing environmental metrics and shortlist a small set that are public health relevant and feasible to audit. We also must make sure to lock in guardrails to prevent greenwashing. And we must build a broad coalition that includes public health, consumer, environment, and patient groups with a shared narrative. And I think we need to think of engaging retailers and food producers as test beds and not just as targets. In terms of the public, we need to keep the public story simple, sticky, and of course, we need to do some decent planning and some decent anticipation and risk and management of risk. And then if we manage to do all that, the success looks pretty straightforward. It is not difficult to imagine a parent, a consumer in a supermarket glancing at two similar products and immediately understanding both their nutritional quality and their environmental footprint. And then when this information is comparable and trusted and the same wherever they shop in the EU, over time such products improve because the shelf rewards better choices. And we already learned how to build that reality for nutrition. And if civil society applies the same discipline to environmental information under the FIC regulation, we can make healthy and sustainable the easy and obvious choice. And with this, I would like to thank you and to wish you a successful conference.